So yes, we can start. Hello everybody. My name is James. I'm a developer advocate at Couchbase, and in this session we'll be talking about building hybrid apps with Couchbase Mobile. So we'll mix and match a bit of PhoneGap and React Native. Both use the same component available in Couchbase Lite. That's the Couchbase Lite REST API. So the same functionalities that you will have learned this morning in Jens's talk are also available through the REST API. So that's HTTP. So if you're developing PhoneGap apps, we have the Phonegap plugin. And to get started, you can create your app and add the plugin that's on GitHub. So you would add it in your PhoneGap application. And then the lifecycle of your PhoneGap app will call the on-device ready method when it starts. And that's your chance to get the URL of the listener that's embedded in the application. So the Phonegap plugin adds a second component to your application. It's called the Couchbase Lite Listener. And this is what makes it possible to interact with the database through HTTP. In the next talk, you will learn about peer-to-peer. So I won't go into more detail about what the Couchbase Lite Listener does. I'm sure Jens and Persin will talk about this more. But just to bear in mind, this is what makes it all tick. It's to have this second optional framework in your application. So in the on-device ready, you can have cblite.getURL. And that's the added functionality using the plugin. And since you'll be working with your database through HTTP, you can, for example, use the fetch API. So I think GitHub has an implementation, a polyfill that you can add to your applications. That way, it runs across all browsers. I think Chrome has it, but Safari doesn't have it yet. So if you bow install fetch and promise, you can start writing nice HTTP code. Okay, it looks like the GIF isn't playing here in full screen mode. That was to show, so we had the PhoneGap app open in the simulator, and then that's the Safari debugging tool. So what you could do here is you get the URL, and then you could create the database using fetch. So I'll come back to this later, but I guess the animation isn't working here. So we can skip that. So to create the database, the first step would be to send a put request /todos, that's the name of the database. And then you would get back 201 to say it was created. That's the first thing you're likely to do when somebody opens your PhoneGap application. And then the second thing is to register the views. So that's how you would query your data, how you would build up the indexes to then query the data. So once you have the database, there's the _design endpoint, and that's the design document where you will store the views. In the same way that you have design documents in the Couchbase server admin console, here you would also create the extra design document, and then in the body of the put, you have the views object, which holds all the different views you want to register in the application. And those are very similar to the views you would write in native code, so Objective-C or Java, if you were using the native SDKs. Notice here as well at the end, So we have a map option. We would also have the reduce if you wanted to register a reduce function. The toString at the end that's appending here is quite important because we have a few return statements here since we want to have a clean code. And we need to escape those. So if you just call toString at the end, JavaScript will escape all the returns and Couchbase Lite will be happy. So that's the second step you're likely to do when the user starts the application. And then you can query those views doing a GET request on that design document called extra. And for example, here we're querying the lists view that we had registered, the first one up there. In the query string, we can pass in all the parameters that you would also have in the native SDKs. So for example, here, descending through, we could have the start key, the end key, all sorts. And then the results is, like so you have the rows, and if you, for example, pass in include docs, that will also give you the actual content of the documents. Okay, so we have a better idea of how to work with the REST API. So now we can quickly take a break from the slides and have a look at the at React Native. So here I have a simple application where I have a text input, a save, and a sync button. So if I type in, nothing happens so far. So when you create the React Native application, you can import manually the Couchbase Lite and Couchbase Lite Listener. So that's the case for React Native. That wouldn't be the case for PhoneGap because the plugin does that for you. If you're using React Native, you can just drag in the Couchbase Lite Listener and Couchbase Lite frameworks. And then in appdelegate.m, we have a function we call in the application did finish launching with options. This one, launch Couchbase Lite, which sets up the listener, and here we specify a port to listen on. So it's easier for development. In production, you could pass in 0 here, and then you would iterate over all the ports until it finds one that's available. So that's a better option for shipping the production app. But here, for development, we'll just hard code 5,800. So I can see the databases in the Couchbase Lite package. So here on the phone itself, so that's 5,800 /_all_DBs. That returns an empty array. So we have no databases there created so far. So that's what we'll do first. We'll do a put request, as we saw in the first slide, with the to-dos. So to-dos is the name of the database. We get back a 201. So now if we reload this, we get that the to-dos was created so that database exists. So on the React side, that's the render method, which renders the UI, so it's effectively just a list and 2 buttons at the top. And then we have a couple of handlers, which will make the requests to the port 5,800. So for example, handle save, we have API save to do. We pass in the string that was typed in the text box. And then here we use fetch. We do a post request to /todos with the type of document and the title. And the second method here we use is get to-dos to display the documents in a list. So here we use _all_docs, passing in include docs equals true, so we get back the title as well. But here we could use a view that we had registered if we had views in our app. So all docs is just a query that returns all the documents in the app. It's very convenient to get started. So notice the item wasn't displaying before because the database wasn't created. So the first thing you have to do is create the database using the REST API, and then save items, and then you can retrieve them. So for Sync Gateway, I'm going to use the guest account enabled, which means we can sync documents without being an authorized user, just for this example. And Walrus, so that every time we restart the Sync Gateway, it cleans up the content. So we start from scratch, effectively. And the database here is called to-dos. And so here now on the admin port and /_admin, I have the to-dos database managed by Sync Gateway. And I see there isn't any documents here so far. And so that's where the handle sync function comes in. That's another HTTP request. So if I dig into there, it's a replicate endpoint. It's a post request. We say that the source database is called to-dos, and the target is our Sync Gateway running on the user port. So that's 4984. Here we specify continuous, which means that as soon as we add a document, another list or to-do, sorry, to our app, it will replicate automatically. So I just clicked the sync button, and now I can see that there was a document replicated to Sync Gateway. So another to do, and then that should yes. So we have the list of, sorry, the lists. Yes. So another to do, which should be a task or a to do, not a list. Anyway, so. That's really how you can get started with the REST API. So here we didn't specify any authentication since we enabled the guest account. So, and there's another issue here, I'm not sure. Anyway, so imagine you had this login screen in your app and you wanted to register users. So for example, the Facebook _token endpoint is an endpoint where you register the access token and the email of the Facebook user associated, and the remote URL you want to then replicate to. So once you have registered a user, you get back, yes, registered. And then in the replicate endpoint, instead of just having target as a string that's the URL of the target database, you have an object, which is still the URL of the remote database, but this time you have auth with Facebook and the email of the user you want to sync as. So That means you can have several users in your database and sync as different users. And the API is a bit different if you're using basic auth. If you're using basic auth, you can just pass in the target URL, the username and password, and it will handle it automatically. So as a response, you get back a session ID, and that's the replication ID. So if you're having a continuous replication in progress, you'll have maybe a bunch of replication IDs that you can store, display in the UI to say to the user, those are the tasks at the moment that are in progress. So here, another one. So instead of having here the target being the sync gateway on the cloud, we have the target as the to-dos on the local, and the source being the remote. If that makes sense, yeah. So we're effectively doing a pull replication here. And we would get a different session ID to say, oh, that's another replication. So now, for the status, we can send a request to _active_tasks, and this will give us back an object like so, where you have the status and the task, which is the session ID that we got back in the first place. So we can say, at the moment, the device is offline, we're not syncing, and if we do long polling on that endpoint, maybe at some point it starts to sync, and you get, so the status is processed 3/20 changes, so it knows there's 20 documents to push or pull, and so far you've done 3. And then the next time it might be 8, so you can show a progress bar there in the app. Another feature that's also available through the REST API is local documents. So those are documents that are not not replicated when you start a push or a pull. Those local documents will be ignored. And they're very convenient because it's a single API across platforms. So on iOS, you might be using NS user defaults. And on Android, you might be using shared preferences. But with local documents, it's just the same API across both platforms. So if you store user credentials or user configs, user settings that you don't want to replicate, this endpoint, wrong slide. This endpoint here is useful. So _local, and then / the ID of the document you want to save. And so the final part is attachments. How do you deal with attachments through the REST API? To save the attachment, you just provide the document ID and the content type, and it's a multi-part request. But in the view request, when you get back the response from the database to say, this is the document that was indexed in the list view or in the tasks view or in any view you've created, you will also have here your attachments. So if I saved an attachment called image, it will give me back some information on that attachment, which is the content type, its length, a digest to figure out if it's similar to another attachment. And so from there, I can make another request using the document ID that this attachment was on / the attachment name, so that's image. And then it's very simple. You can just use this endpoint here in an image tag, for example, and all the images will just display because it's it's handled by the web view. So once you have your view results, you just populate those image tags with those corresponding values. So a bit more information if you want to get started with React Native, I guess, or just use the Phonegap plugin. You can find all the documentation on the portal. There's the To-Do Lite PhoneGap implementation, which follows the To-Do Lite Android and To-Do Lite iOS, so you can share to-dos and share lists and all that sorts. There isn't a React Native one at the moment, but there will be soon, so be sure to stay tuned. And also feel free to ping the forum if you have any question, obviously, about React Native or PhoneGap, and we'll help. So with that, I'd like to welcome any questions you may have, and thanks very much. Yeah.
Nowadays, so PhoneGap was donated to Apache, and the name was changed to Cordova.
Yeah.
So the situation is same with Cordova?
Yes. The plugin works for Cordova as well. Yeah.
No difference?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's the PhoneGap Cordova scenario, I think, is mainly a naming difference, and but the actual code is actually Cordova now, so I should have maybe called it Cordova, yes. Great, so yeah, in the next session, you'll learn about the Couchbase Lite Listener more in depth through the native SDK, I guess, and then in a peer-to-peer scenario where you're replicating to other devices. So here we had a look at Sync Gateway, and then next is P2P. Great, thanks very much.